The galaxy was on the brink of collapse. For years, the Ceruvian Dominion and the Krenak Alliance had fought a brutal war, dragging countless star systems into their chaos. Entire planets were turned to ashes, their populations wiped out. The war showed no sign of ending, and the Galactic Council, once the galaxy's voice of reason, found itself powerless to stop it. In the vast chamber of the council hall, delegates from dozens of species sat in grim silence. The room was tense, heavy with the weight of failed negotiations. High Chancellor Oblivion, a tall, silver-skinned figure, rose from his seat at the center. His voice echoed, filled with desperation. "We have tried diplomacy. We have tried sanctions. Nothing has worked," he said. "The Dominion and the Alliance will destroy everything if we do not find a solution." "But what can we do?" a delegate from the Mailer race asked. His antennae twitched nervously. "We have no power to stop their fleets." There was a murmur of agreement. No one had an answer, except for one. A small, hooded figure in the corner stood slowly. All eyes turned toward him. He was a representative of Earth, the newest member of the Council. Humans were often underestimated, seen as too young, too reckless, and too unpredictable. Yet they carried a reputation that no one could deny. "Earth can stop this war," the human delegate said, his voice calm but firm. "But you must understand what it means to ask for our help." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he was talking about. Earth's battleships were legendary, though rarely seen in action. Stories of their devastating power were whispered across the galaxy. In the last major conflict they had intervened in, humanity's fleet had ended the war in mere days, but at a terrible cost. Chancellor Oblivion frowned. "We know your strength," he said cautiously, "but the galaxy remembers the devastation your battleships caused. Is there no other way?" The human delegate sighed. "The Dominion and the Alliance respect only power. They won't stop unless we make them." A wave of unease swept through the chamber. The Lervian delegate with shimmering scales leaned forward. "If your battleships are as powerful as they say, why haven't you already joined the fight?" The human's eyes narrowed. "Because we don't want to," he said simply. "We've seen what war does. Our planet paid a high price to learn that lesson. But if the Council insists, we'll do what's necessary." The delegates exchanged uneasy glances. No one wanted to be the one to make the final decision. Yet the alternative was worse, a war that would consume the entire galaxy. Finally, Chancellor Oblivion raised his hand for silence. "We must consider all options," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "But I will not make this decision lightly. Earth, give us time." The human nodded, but his face was grim. "Time is running out, Chancellor. And when it's gone, you'll wish you had acted sooner." As the meeting ended, the human walked out of the hall, his mind racing. He knew what would happen next. The Council would deliberate, argue, and delay until the war reached their doorstep. By then, it might be too late. In the shadows of the galaxy, the Ceruvian Dominion was already planning its next assault. And in a distant star system, the Krenak Alliance prepared its fleet for retaliation. Neither side knew what awaited them if Earth entered the war. But they would find out soon enough. The Galactic Council's hesitation was exactly what the Ceruvian Dominion needed. In their war chambers, surrounded by holograms of battle plans and maps, Supreme Commander Zerlak leaned back in his seat, a sinister smile on his reptilian face. His advisors, clad in dark armor, stood around him. "They are weak," Zerlak declared, his voice hissing through the room. "They think words will save them. Let them talk. While they waste time, we will strike where it hurts the most." An advisor stepped forward, his scaled hand pointing to a hologram of a small planet. "Commander, this is Rithafor, a neutral planet with no military defenses. It's where the humans have established a trade colony." Zerlak's smile widened. "Humans," he spat the word as if it left a bitter taste. "Their arrogance is legendary, but their actions show restraint. They value their colonies, their civilians. If we crush this outpost, they will either submit or reveal their hand. The room filled with the sound of approval. The plan was simple: provoke humanity, test their strength, and, if possible, force them into making a mistake. Zerlak gave the order, and within hours, a fleet of Ceruvian warships was en route to Rithafor. On Rithafor, the humans were oblivious to the danger heading their way. The colony was a bustling hub of activity, filled with traders, scientists, and families. Children played in open fields under the planet's twin suns, while workers unloaded cargo ships in the docks. It was a place of peace, far removed from the galaxy's turmoil. Captain Alina Hayes, the leader of the colony's small security force, watched the activity from the observation deck of the control tower. She had served in Earth's military before retiring to a quieter life, but the instincts of a soldier never left her. Her peace was shattered by the sudden blaring of alarms. The communications officer, a young man barely out of training, turned to her with panic in his eyes. "Captain, we've got multiple ships on the radar. Ceruvian warships, a lot of them." Hayes's heart sank. The Ceruvians had no reason to attack a neutral colony, but the message was clear: this was no accident. Gripping the console, she issued orders to evacuate the civilians and prepare the colony's limited defenses. "We can't fight them off," the officer stammered. "We don't have the firepower." "We're not trying to fight them," Hayes replied sharply. "We're trying to survive." As the Ceruvian fleet entered orbit, their commander's voice echoed through the colony's communication systems. "Humans of Rithafor, surrender immediately. If you resist, we will show no mercy." Hayes clenched her fists. There was no time to wait for help from Earth. The colony had a single outdated defense ship and a handful of orbital cannons. It wasn't enough. But humans had a reputation for resilience, and Hayes wasn't about to let her people go without a fight. "Tell everyone to head for the bunkers," she ordered, "and activate the distress beacon. Earth needs to know what's happening." The Ceruvian fleet began its assault, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts on the colony. Buildings crumbled, fires erupted, and the once peaceful skies turned into a battlefield. Hayes directed her team with precision, coordinating the evacuation and firing the colony's meager defenses to buy time. On Earth, the distress signal was received by Admiral Elias Ward. He stood in the command center of the U.S. Titan, humanity's most advanced battleship. When the signal's message appeared on the screen, his expression darkened. "Set course for Rithafor," he commanded. "Maximum speed." As the Titan roared to life, Ward knew what was at stake. Humanity had warned the galaxy about unleashing their battleships. Now, they had no choice. The Ceruvians had crossed the line, and they were about to find out why humanity's warnings were never idle threats. The colony on Rithafor was in chaos. The Ceruvian assault was relentless, their energy blasts tearing through buildings and sending fire and debris across the settlement. Civilians huddled in underground bunkers, their fear growing with every explosion that shook the ground above. Captain Alina Hayes stood at the command console in the control tower, sweat dripping down her face as she coordinated the evacuation and defenses. "Captain, our shields are down to 30%. One of her officers shouted, panic evident in his voice. "Keep firing the orbital cannons." Hayes barked back. "We need to hold them off as long as we can." Her mind raced. She knew the colony's defenses couldn't withstand a full-scale Ceruvian assault. The Ceruvians weren't here to negotiate or claim the planet. They wanted to make a statement. They wanted to show the galaxy that even humans were vulnerable. Suddenly, a voice came through the comms, crackling with static. "This is Admiral Elias Ward of the U.S. Titan. Rithafor, do you copy?" Hayes grabbed the communicator, her heart pounding. "This is Captain Alina Hayes of Rithafor. Admiral, we're under heavy attack. Our defenses won't hold much longer." "We're en route," Ward replied, his voice steady. "Hold your position. Help is on the way." Hayes closed her eyes briefly, relief washing over her. But she knew the Titan wouldn't arrive instantly. They were still on their own for now. On board the Ceruvian flagship Kragath, Supreme Commander Zerlak watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. Holographic projections showed the colony's defenses faltering, their orbital cannons firing feebly against the Ceruvian fleet's superior firepower. "These humans are nothing but bark," Zerlak sneered. "Their so-called strength is a myth." One of his officers approached, bowing respectfully. "Commander, we've intercepted a transmission. A human battleship, the U.S. Titan, is on its way." Zerlak's smile faltered for a moment before he regained his composure. "Let it come," he said confidently. "We will crush their pride, just as we're crushing this colony." Despite his bold words, there was a flicker of unease in his tone. The Titan's reputation was not easily dismissed, even by the proud Ceruvians. The U.S. Titan hurtled through hyperspace, its engines roaring with power. On the bridge, Admiral Ward stood like a statue, his eyes locked on the holographic display of Rapor. The colony's distress signal continued to transmit, each passing second bringing more reports of destruction and casualties. "ETA to Rapor," Ward asked his navigation officer. "6 minutes, sir," the officer replied. Ward's jaw tightened. He hated every second of this delay, but he knew what awaited them. The Ceruvians wouldn't back down, not until they felt the full weight of humanity's power. He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare the railguns and plasma lances. Target their flagship as soon as we exit hyperspace." "Yes, Admiral," the officer replied, a determined glint in his eye. Back on Rapor, Hayes and her team fought valiantly, buying precious time. She watched as the last orbital cannon exploded under the relentless bombardment, leaving the colony completely exposed. "Admiral Ward," she said into the communicator, her voice strained. "We're out of defenses. They're going to break through to the bunkers." "Hold the line, Captain," Ward replied firmly. "We're almost there." As the Ceruvian ground forces began landing near the colony, Hayes grabbed a rifle and joined her security team. The sight of the enemy troops, towering, armored warriors with reptilian features, sent a chill down her spine, but she stood her ground, refusing to abandon her people. Then, just as all hope seemed lost, the skies above Rapor split open. The U.S. Titan emerged from hyperspace, its colossal form casting a shadow over the battlefield. Its weapons glowed with energy, ready to unleash devastation. Admiral Ward's voice boomed through every channel, calm yet filled with authority. "This is the U.S. Titan. Ceruvian forces, stand down immediately, or face the consequences." The battle was about to change. The arrival of the U.S. Titan was like the breaking of a storm over a quiet village. The massive battleship emerged from hyperspace with a roar that echoed through the void, its sleek, dark hull gleaming with advanced weaponry. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent as all eyes turned toward the human vessel. On board the Ceruvian flagship Kragath, Supreme Commander Zerlak stared at the colossal human ship on his display. His smug confidence wavered. "Impossible," he muttered under his breath. "No ship should be able to travel that fast." His officers shifted nervously, awaiting orders. "What are your commands, Supreme Commander?" one asked. Zerlak hesitated, then snarled, "It's just one ship. Destroy it." The Ceruvian fleet shifted formation, their weapons charging as they prepared to attack the Titan. Zerlak's pride would not allow him to retreat, even in the face of humanity's most feared weapon. On the bridge of the U.S. Titan, Admiral Elias Ward stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze locked on the Ceruvian fleet ahead. The enemy ships were numerous, but Ward was unfazed. He knew the power of the Titan, and he knew this battle was about to become a lesson the Ceruvians would never forget. "Target the flagship," Ward ordered. "Disable their engines and weapons. I want them to feel our strength without total annihilation." "Aye, Admiral," replied the tactical officer. The Titan's railguns hummed to life, their barrels glowing faintly as they charged. The first volley of railgun fire streaked across the battlefield like bolts of lightning. The shot struck the Kragath with pinpoint accuracy, tearing through its shields and disabling its main engines in a single devastating blow. The Ceruvian flagship shuddered under the impact, sparks flying from its damaged systems. On the Kragath, alarms blared as Zerlak stumbled to keep his footing. "What just happened?" he roared. "They've crippled our engines, Supreme Commander," an officer reported. "Our shields are failing." Zerlak's claws dug into the console in frustration. This was not how the battle was supposed to go. Back on Rapor, Captain Alina Hayes and her team watched in awe as the Titan unleashed its power. The Ceruvian ground forces, who had been closing in on the colony, hesitated. They looked to the skies, their confidence faltering at the sight of the massive battleship dominating the battlefield. "This is it," Hayes whispered to herself. "This is what they were afraid of." Her communicator crackled, and Admiral Ward's calm voice came through. "Captain Hayes, we've neutralized the flagship's engines. Focus on protecting the civilians. We'll handle the rest." "Yes, sir," Hayes replied, her heart swelling with renewed hope. The Titan moved with deadly precision, its plasma lances and energy cannons picking off Ceruvian ships one by one. The human battleship's advanced AI systems adapted to enemy movements in real time, making it nearly impossible for the Ceruvians to land a meaningful blow. In desperation, Zerlak ordered his fleet to retreat. "Fall back to Sector 9, he shouted. "Regroup and—" Before he could finish, another railgun shot from the Titan struck the Kragath, disabling its weapons entirely. Zerlak's command was silenced, his ship dead in space. The Ceruvian fleet scattered, their once coordinated formation now a disorganized retreat. The Titan held its position, its imposing presence a clear message. Humanity was not to be underestimated. On the bridge of the U.S. Titan, Admiral Ward allowed himself a small sigh of relief. The battle was won, but he knew the war was far from over. Turning to his communications officer, he said, "Send a message to the Galactic Council. Inform them that the Ceruvians have been repelled, but also tell them this. If they want us to end this war, they'd better be ready for what comes next." As the Titan loomed over the quieted battlefield, Ward knew the galaxy had just been reminded of humanity's power and its resolve. The aftermath of the battle was eerily quiet. The Ceruvian fleet, once a symbol of overwhelming power, had retreated into the void, leaving behind scattered debris and their disabled flagship, the Kragath. On Rapor, smoke still rose from the ruins of the colony, but the attack had been halted. Civilians began emerging cautiously from their bunkers, their faces a mixture of relief and awe. Captain Alina Hayes stood on the surface, her rifle slung over her shoulder, gazing up at the U.S. Titan hovering in low orbit. It cast a protective shadow over the colony, a reminder of humanity's strength and the narrow escape they had just experienced. Her communicator crackled to life. "Captain Hayes," came Admiral Ward's steady voice. "Status report." Hayes pressed the device to her ear. "Admiral, we've got damage to nearly all major facilities, but the bunkers held. Civilians are accounted for. Casualties are minimal, considering what we were up against." "That's good to hear," Ward replied. There was a pause, and then his tone grew somber. "Captain, the Ceruvians won't stay down for long. This was just the beginning." Hayes nodded grimly. "Understood, sir. What's our next move?" On board the U.S. Titan, Admiral Ward stood at the center of the command bridge, his gaze fixed on the holographic display of Rapor. The sight of the colony's scars weighed heavily on him, but he pushed those feelings aside. There was no time for regret, only preparation. "Send a retrieval team to the Kragath," Ward ordered. "I want their commander alive. We need to know their next move." "Aye, Admiral," replied one of his officers. Within minutes, a strike team was deployed from the Titan, descending toward the crippled Ceruvian flagship. The Ceruvians, still stunned by their defeat, offered little resistance. Supreme Commander Zerlak was taken into custody, his pride as shattered as his fleet. When Zerlak was brought before Ward, His piercing yellow eyes glared at the human admiral with defiance. "You think this is a victory?" he hissed. "This is nothing. The Dominion will never stop. You've only ensured more bloodshed." Ward leaned forward, his calm demeanor unshaken. "Maybe. But let me make one thing clear. Humanity didn't ask for this war. Your kind brought it to our doorstep. If you want to see what happens when we truly commit to a fight, keep pushing us." Zerlek snarled but said nothing. He was taken away, his silence more telling than any words. Meanwhile, in the halls of the Galactic Council, chaos erupted. The news of humanity's intervention had spread like wildfire, along with reports of the Titan's devastating performance. Delegates from dozens of species argued furiously, some praising humanity for their decisive action, others condemning them for escalating the conflict. High Chancellor Oblivion tried to restore order, but his voice was drowned out by the clamor. Finally, he raised his hand, activating the chamber's silencing protocols. "Enough," he thundered. "We will not resolve this through shouting. Humanity's actions have forced the Ceruvians into retreat. That is a fact. But what comes next is a decision we must make together." The Earth representative, a composed woman named Ambassador Rachel Vega, stood and addressed the council. "Humanity didn't want this war, but we won't stand by while innocent lives are lost. If the council wishes to end this conflict, you'll have our support. But let me warn you, if you hesitate, more lives will be lost, and not just human ones." Her words hung in the air, leaving the chamber in heavy silence. Back on the U.S. Titan, Ward received a priority message from the council. "They're still deliberating," his communications officer reported. Ward sighed, his patience wearing thin. "We don't have time for politics," he muttered. "Prepare the fleet. If the council can't make a decision, we'll force the Dominion and the Alliance to the table ourselves." As the Titan prepared for its next mission, Ward knew the galaxy wasn't ready for what was coming, but humanity would be. The Ceruvian Dominion's retreat was short-lived. Deep within their war council, Supreme Commander Zerlak sat shackled but defiant as his subordinates argued over their next move. The tension in the room was palpable, but one sentiment was clear: the humans had embarrassed them, and the Dominion's pride demanded revenge. One of Zerlak's closest generals, a sharp-eyed strategist named Varlak, paced the chamber. "The humans are powerful," he admitted, "but they are not invincible. Their battleship may be advanced, but they rely on strategy and precision. We need brute force." Another officer frowned. "What are you suggesting?" Varlak's reptilian grin revealed sharp teeth. "The prototype. We've spent decades building it. Now is the time to use it." The room fell silent. The prototype was a massive experimental warship, bristling with untested but potentially devastating weapons. It was a gamble, but Zerlak, listening from his restraints, hissed in approval. "Do it," he growled. "Make them regret the day they crossed us." On board the U.S. Titan, Admiral Ward reviewed the intelligence gathered from Zerlak. The Dominion's plans were vague but clear enough. They were preparing for a counterattack. Ward suspected they would bring their most destructive assets into play, and he knew the Titan wouldn't be enough on its own. He stood before his crew, his voice steady but serious. "The Ceruvians are preparing something big. We don't know exactly what, but we can't wait for them to strike first. We need to take the fight to them." Captain Elena Hayes, now aboard the Titan to assist with strategic planning, stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, do we have enough firepower to handle what's coming? If they bring out their full arsenal, we could be outmatched." Ward gave her a thin smile. "That's why we're not going in alone." He gestured to the holographic display, which showed reinforcements arriving. Several human battleships, sleek and powerful, emerged from hyperspace, joining the Titan in formation. Each was equipped with state-of-the-art weaponry and shields designed to withstand even the heaviest fire. Hayes let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. That might just do it. In a distant sector of the galaxy, the Ceruvian prototype warship, Oblivion, activated for the first time. It was a behemoth, dwarfing even the Titan in size, its surface bristling with experimental plasma cannons, missile arrays, and an ominous energy core at its heart. Its crew, loyal and fanatical, prepared for the ultimate showdown. Varlak stood on the bridge, overseeing the final preparations. "Set course for the humans' last known location," he ordered. "Today, we remind the galaxy who the true rulers are." Back on the Titan, Ward coordinated the fleet's approach toward a Ceruvian stronghold. Their goal was to disrupt the Dominion supply lines and draw out their fleet. The strategy was simple: bake the Ceruvians into a confrontation they couldn't ignore. As the human fleet entered the system, they encountered moderate resistance. Ceruvian defense ships scrambled to repel the attack, but they were no match for the precision and firepower of humanity's battleships. Within minutes, the outpost was neutralized. Ward frowned as he watched the battle's progress. "This is too easy," he muttered. "They're holding back." His suspicions were confirmed moments later when long-range scanners picked up a massive energy signature approaching at high speed. The Oblivion was coming. Hayes, standing beside him, stared at the readings. "What is that?" Ward's face darkened. "Trouble." The Oblivion emerged from hyperspace, its size and power overwhelming the view screens. The Ceruvian warship opened fire immediately, its plasma cannons sending waves of destructive energy toward the human fleet. The Titan took evasive action, but the sheer force of the attack shook the entire ship. Ward's voice rang out across the bridge. "All hands, battle stations. This is the fight we've been preparing for. Let's show them what humanity can do." As the Titan and its fleet engaged the Oblivion, the battle for the galaxy entered a new, terrifying phase. Humanity's resolve would be tested like never before. The Oblivion loomed like a dark shadow of doom, its weapons firing relentlessly as the human fleet struggled to maintain their positions. Plasma blasts illuminated the battlefield, and debris from destroyed ships floated in the cold vacuum of space. The U.S. Titan maneuvered deftly, but even its advanced shields groaned under the assault of the Ceruvian prototype warship. Admiral Elias Ward stood firm on the bridge, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Keep our formation tight. Focus fire on their forward cannons. Those plasma arrays are their biggest threat." His crew worked tirelessly, sweat dripping from their brows as they executed his commands. The Titan's railguns and plasma lances fired back, striking precise blows against the Oblivion. Smaller human battleships flanked the enemy warship, targeting its auxiliary systems in a desperate attempt to find a weakness. Captain Elena Hayes, stationed at the tactical console, analyzed the battle with sharp focus. "Admiral, their shields are regenerating faster than we can deplete them. They've got some kind of energy core boosting their defenses." Ward frowned. "Can we isolate it?" "Not from here," Hayes replied. "We'd need to get closer or board the ship." The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with risk. Ward's mind raced, weighing their options. "Hayes, prepare a strike team. If we can't take out the Oblivion from the outside, we'll do it from the inside." Inside the Oblivion, Varlak watched the battle unfold with growing confidence. The prototype's experimental systems were performing beyond expectations, and the human fleet was beginning to falter. "They thought they could match us," Varlak sneered. "Fools." But his confidence was shaken when a small human strike vessel broke through the defenses, heading straight for the Oblivion. Varlak barked orders. "Destroy that ship. Don't let them get close." Despite heavy fire, the human vessel reached the Oblivion's hull, docking near a maintenance airlock. Hayes led the strike team, a group of elite soldiers clad in advanced combat armor, into the Ceruvian warship. The corridors of the Oblivion were dimly lit, the air heavy with a metallic scent. The strike team moved swiftly, weapons ready. Hayes's voice was steady as she issued commands. "Stay sharp. We're looking for their energy core. It'll be heavily guarded." They encountered resistance almost immediately. Ceruvian soldiers, tall and armored, charged at them with energy blades and plasma rifles. The humans held their ground, their precise training and superior tactics giving them the upper hand. As the team pressed deeper into the ship, Hayes noticed something strange. The walls pulsed faintly, almost like a living organism. "This isn't just a warship," she muttered. "It's some kind of hybrid, part machine, part organic." Her communicator crackled. "Hayes, this is Ward." The Admiral's voice came through. "We're detecting unusual energy readings. Whatever powers their shields is destabilizing the entire ship. You need to disable it before it takes out both fleets." "Understood," Hayes replied. She led her team toward the source of the energy readings, fighting through waves of Ceruvian defenders. Back on the Titan, Ward monitored the battle with grim determination. The fleet was taking heavy losses, and the Oblivion was still firing relentlessly. "We need that core disabled," he muttered, "or this is over." The bridge shook as another plasma blast struck the Titan. Alarms blared, and the damage reports flooded in. But Ward refused to back down. "Hold the line," he ordered. "Give Hayes the time she needs." Hayes and her team finally reached the energy core. It was massive, a pulsating sphere of raw power surrounded by glowing conduits. The Ceruvian defenders guarding it fought ferociously, but the human team prevailed, taking control of the chamber. Hayes studied the core, her mind racing. "This thing isn't just powering their shields, it's their entire ship. If we destroy it, the whole thing will go down." "Then we'd better move fast," a soldier muttered. Hayes planted charges on the core, setting a short timer. As the team retreated, alarms blared throughout the Oblivion. The countdown had begun. The humans raced back to their ship as the Oblivion began to shake violently. Hayes's voice came through the comms. "Admiral, the charges are set. Get ready for fireworks." The battle was far from over, but the tide was about to turn. The Oblivion trembled violently as the explosive charges ticked closer to detonation. Deep within the ship, alarms blared, and Ceruvian soldiers scrambled in confusion. The once imposing warship now felt like a chaotic trap, its corridors shaking as energy surged wildly through the unstable core. Captain Elena Hayes and her team sprinted through the dimly lit passageways, their path marked by flickering lights and sparks from damaged systems. Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. "Move faster. The charges are about to go off." One of her team members glanced at the timer on his wrist. 2 minutes, Captain. We won't make it to the dock." Hayes clenched her jaw. "Then we find another way." She activated her communicator, her voice crackling through the static. "Admiral Ward, we've set the charges, but we're cut off from the extraction point. We need immediate evac." On the Titan's bridge, Admiral Ward frowned as he analyzed the holographic display of the Oblivion. "Understood, Hayes. I'm dispatching the shuttle to your location. Hold tight." Turning to his crew, Ward issued rapid orders. "Deploy emergency teams. If they don't make it out, this mission is a failure." Inside the Oblivion, Varlak stood in the command center, his sharp teeth bared in a furious snarl. The energy core's instability was spreading, and his crew was abandoning their posts. "You cowards," he roared. "Stay and fight. The Dominion does not surrender." But his defiance was met with silence. The ship shook again, and Varlak knew the truth. The humans had outmaneuvered him. His greatest weapon, the pride of the Ceruvian Dominion, was about to be destroyed. In a final act of desperation, Varlak activated the ship's self-destruct sequence, overriding the failsafes. If the Oblivion was to be lost, it would take as many humans as possible with it. Hayes and her team reached an airlock, but the mechanism was jammed. She slammed her fist against the console in frustration. "Come on." The sound of Ceruvian soldiers approaching made her spin around, rifle raised. "Defensive positions. We're not going down without a fight." The humans braced for the assault, but before the first shot was fired, a human shuttle appeared outside the airlock. Its grappling arm extended, locking onto the damaged door. The sound of metal grinding filled the chamber as the shuttle systems forced the airlock open. "Hayes, get aboard," came the voice of the pilot. "Move, move, move," Hayes shouted to her team, covering them as they scrambled into the shuttle. She was the last aboard, firing one last shot at the advancing Ceruvian troops before the hatch sealed shut. "Punch it," she yelled. The shuttle shot away from the Oblivion, the massive warship now glowing ominously as its core reached critical instability. On the Titan, Ward watched the display intently as the shuttle raced back toward the fleet. "Do we have them?" he asked. "Yes, sir," his communications officer confirmed. "The shuttle is clear." Ward let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Good. Now get us out of range." The Titan and its fleet began retreating as the Oblivion reached the end of its life. The ship erupted in a massive explosion, its energy core detonating with a blinding flash that lit up the entire sector. The shockwave rippled outward, disabling nearby Ceruvian ships and scattering their fleet. Cheers erupted on the Titan's bridge. The Oblivion was destroyed, and the Ceruvian forces were in disarray. But Ward remained stoic, his gaze fixed on the display. "Signal the fleet to regroup. This isn't over yet." In the aftermath of the explosion, Hayes and her team returned to the Titan, greeted with applause and relief. But Hayes wasn't celebrating. "That was too close," she told Ward in the debriefing room. "They won't stop. The Dominion will try something worse." Ward nodded, his expression grim. "You're right. This was just one battle. The war is far from over." As the Titan prepared for its next mission, the galaxy held its breath. Humanity had delivered a powerful message, but the fight for peace was only beginning. The destruction of the Oblivion sent shockwaves across the galaxy. News of the Ceruvian Dominion's most powerful weapon falling to humanity's daring strategy spread quickly. Across neutral star systems, species whispered of the humans' resilience and courage. But in the halls of the Galactic Council, the tension only grew. The council chambers were filled with heated debate. High Chancellor Oblivion tried to maintain order, but the voices of dissent and fear were overwhelming. Some delegates demanded immediate action to rein in humanity's growing influence, while others called for Earth to lead the peace talks. "It's clear that the humans are the only ones who can end this war," one delegate argued. "The Dominion won't stop unless they're forced to." Another delegate countered, their voice trembling. "But at what cost? Humanity's power is terrifying. What if they turn their battleships on us next?" Oblivion raised his hand, silencing the room. "Enough. We are here to end this war, not to fan the flames of fear. The humans have shown their strength, but they've also shown restraint. Let us trust that they will do what's right." The Earth representative, Ambassador Rachel Vega, stood and addressed the chamber. "Humanity has no interest in domination. We entered this war to protect innocent lives, and that remains our goal. But if the Council wants peace, you must stand with us. Otherwise, the Dominion will only regroup and strike again." Her words hung in the air, leaving the chamber in thoughtful silence. On board the U.S. Titan, Admiral Ward prepared for the next stage of the campaign. The destruction of the Oblivion had given humanity a temporary advantage, but he knew the Ceruvians wouldn't stay down for long. Their pride wouldn't allow it. Ward stood in the war room with Captain Elena Hayes and his senior officers. A holographic map of the galaxy displayed the Dominion's remaining strongholds. "The Dominion has lost their superweapon, but they still have fleets and resources," Ward said. "We need to hit them where it hurts. Their command structure." Hayes studied the map, her finger tracing a route to a heavily fortified planet. "This is their central command base," she said. "If we take it out, their entire chain of command will collapse." "It's a risky move," another officer remarked. "Their defenses will be impenetrable." Ward nodded. "That's why we won't attack head-on. We'll use misdirection. While their fleets chase a decoy, the Titan and a strike team will infiltrate the base and neutralize their leadership." The plan was set, and the crew prepared for the mission. Humanity's fate and the galaxies hung in the balance. The infiltration was swift and precise. Hayes led the strike team, her experience from the Oblivion mission giving her the confidence to navigate the Dominion's defenses. They slipped past patrols, disabling security systems and advancing toward the command center. Inside, the Ceruvian leaders were in disarray. The destruction of the Oblivion had shaken their confidence, and the sudden breach in their defenses left them panicking. Supreme Commander Zerlak, recently freed by his loyalists, tried to rally them, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of explosions. Hayes and her team burst into the command center, weapons drawn. "Surrender now," she commanded. Zerlak snarled but knew he was outmatched. Slowly, he raised his hands. His subordinates followed suit, their arrogance replaced by fear. On the Titan, Ward received the transmission. The command center was secured, and the Dominion leaders were in custody. A wave of relief swept through the bridge. "It's over," one officer whispered. But Ward wasn't celebrating yet. He opened a channel to the Galactic Council. "We've neutralized the Dominion's leadership. The war is effectively over. Now it's up to the Council to ensure lasting peace." In the weeks that followed, peace talks were held, with humanity playing a central role. The Dominion, forced to disarm, signed a treaty that ended the war. The galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. As the Titan returned to Earth, Ward stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Hayes joined him, her expression reflective. "Do you think they'll remember this as a victory?" she asked. Ward smiled faintly. "I hope they remember it as a lesson, that peace is worth fighting for." The stars stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of the battles fought and the hope for a brighter future.